The world in the summer of 1914 felt, to many, like a place of unprecedented progress. It was a time of great empires connected by steamships, railways, and telegraph cables. In London, Paris, Berlin, citizens enjoyed new technologies and a sense of optimism. The arts were flourishing, science was making incredible breakthroughs. For the wealthy and the middle classes, it seemed as though humanity was on a steady, upward march. This period, often called the Belle Epoque Beautiful Era, was marked by a confidence in the future. People truly believed that major European wars were a thing of the past, relics of a more barbaric age that had been left behind. Beneath this glittering surface, however, the structure of this world was far more fragile than it appeared. The great powers of Europe were locked in a complex dance of alliances, rivalries, and colonial ambitions. The calm was deceptive. A storm of unimaginable fury was gathering just over the horizon. The British Empire spanned the globe, its vastness guaranteed by the world's most powerful navy. In the heart of Europe, the newly unified German Empire was an industrial and military powerhouse, eager to claim its place in the sun. The decades leading up to 1914 saw Europe slowly dividing itself into two armed camps. This was a direct result of a system of military alliances, originally intended to provide security and keep the peace. Instead, they created a situation where a small local conflict could quickly escalate into a massive continent-wide war. The first major bloc was the Triple Alliance: Germany, Austria-Hungary, Italy. They pledged to defend one another if attacked. This powerful Central European pact was a source of great anxiety for its neighbors, particularly France, who felt encircled and vulnerable next to the might of the German army. In response, an opposing pact began to take shape. France, Russia. They were united by a common fear of Germany. Britain, long committed to splendid isolation, grew alarmed by Germany's rapid naval expansion. Britain moved closer to France and Russia. The result was the Triple Entente, a binding understanding between the three powers. Europe was now split down the middle. A frantic arms race made the division even more dangerous. Every major power poured vast sums into its military. Armies grew larger. Military planning became more detailed and rigid. Germany's Schlieffen Plan outlined a lightning invasion of France through neutral Belgium. The Balkans became the powder keg of Europe, a hotbed of nationalism where small nations and empires were destined to collide. The flashpoint finally came on a sunny Sunday, the 28th of June, 1914. The location was Sarajevo, the capital of the Austro-Hungarian province of Bosnia. The target was Archduke Franz Ferdinand, his wife Sophie. He was visiting the city for a military inspection. For many Serbian nationalists, the Archduke represented an oppressive foreign power. They dreamed of freeing Bosnia from Austrian rule, uniting it with Serbia, creating a greater Slavic state. To them, the visit was a provocation. A secret group, the Black Hand, had plotted the assassination. They trained and armed a small team of young assassins, positioned along the planned motorcade route through Sarajevo. The initial attempt failed spectacularly. One conspirator threw a bomb at the Archduke's car. It bounced off and exploded beneath the following vehicle, injuring several officers and onlookers. The Archduke and his wife were unharmed. In the chaos, the motorcade sped away. The Archduke insisted on visiting the injured at the hospital. There was confusion about the revised route. The driver made a wrong turn onto a side street. As he tried to reverse, the car stalled. By a fateful coincidence, the car stopped just feet from an assassin. A 19-year-old Serbian nationalist, Gavrilo Princip, drew his pistol and fired 2 shots at point-blank range. In the aftermath of the assassination, a tense period of diplomatic maneuvering began. Historians now call this the July Crisis. Austria-Hungary vowed to crush Serbia, seeing Serbia as a threat to its fragile empire. They hesitated to act alone, fearing Russian intervention as protector of the Slavs. So, Vienna sought assurances from Germany. On July 5th, Germany issued the blank check promising unconditional support to Austria-Hungary. That German backing emboldened Vienna. On July 23rd, nearly a month after the assassination, Austria-Hungary delivered an incredibly harsh ultimatum to Serbia. Serbia accepted most terms but rejected the demand, allowing Austrian officials to investigate on Serbian soil. That partial rejection was the excuse Vienna needed on July 28, 1914. 1 month after the Archduke's death, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. The first domino had fallen. The declaration of war triggered the rigid system of alliances. Russia mobilized its vast army to defend Serbia and deter Austria-Hungary. This single act was critical. The German military, guided by the Schlieffen Plan, viewed Russian mobilization as a direct, urgent threat. Germany declared war on Russia on August 1st. On August 4th, German troops crossed the Belgian frontier. That same day, Britain declared war on Germany. The dominoes had fallen, and the Great War had begun. Everyone had expected a short, decisive war. The boys will be home by Christmas, soldiers marched off in the summer of 1914. Early battles were indeed fluid and fast-moving, but the sheer destructive power of modern weapons soon brought this to a grinding halt. Machine guns, long-range artillery, and rapid-firing rifles. The old tactics of cavalry charges and massed infantry assaults were, well, basically suicidal. After the initial German advance into France was stopped at the Battle of the Marne, both sides desperately sought to outflank each other in a race to the sea. When they reached the English Channel, there was nowhere left to go, and so the digging began. From the coast of Belgium all the way to the Swiss border, a vast and complex network of trenches was excavated. This became the Western Front, the defining image of the First World War. For the next 4 years, millions of men would live, fight and die. Mud, wire, and craters. Life in the trenches was a miserable existence, a constant battle not just against the enemy, but against the elements and disease. Soldiers endured freezing winters and the ceaseless rain that turned the battlefield into a quagmire of thick, clinging mud. On the first day of the Battle of the Somme in 1916, the British Army suffered nearly 60,000 casualties, the bloodiest day in its history. The First World War was not just fought by soldiers in the trenches, it was a total war, requiring the complete mobilization of nations. Millions of men left factories and farms to join the army, causing a massive labor shortage. That shortage opened unprecedented opportunities for women. Women became munitions workers, making shells and bullets. They worked as bus drivers. They served as police officers. They worked as farm laborers. Their labor kept the country running and armies supplied. Governments assumed sweeping powers to manage economies and society. In Britain, the Defence of the Realm Act allowed the government to control industries. It allowed censorship of the press. It even regulated pub opening hours. German U-boats attacked merchant shipping, creating food shortages. Rationing was introduced for staples, sugar, meat, butter. Propaganda became a powerful tool to maintain morale, to encourage enlistment, to demonize the enemy. Air raids brought the war home. German Zeppelin airships. Cities were bombed and civilians shelled. Newspapers' casualty lists ran constantly, bringing grief to almost every family. People lived under the shadow of losing a husband, son, or brother. The emotional toll united communities in sacrifice and loss. The First World War became a grim laboratory for military technology, driving innovation at a terrifying pace. The conflict was defined by the dominance of defensive firepower, primarily the machine gun. A single, well-placed machine gun team could cut down hundreds of attacking infantrymen in minutes. In response, armies developed increasingly powerful and accurate long-range artillery. Massive guns, located miles behind the front lines, could fire enormous explosive shells, pulverizing enemy trenches, obliterating fortifications, turning the landscape into a moonscape of craters. Poison gas was first used on a large scale by the Germans at the Second Battle of Ypres in 1915. Chlorine gas, phosgene gas, mustard gas. Gas masks were quickly developed, but the psychological terror of a gas attack remained a constant feature of life at the front. The war also moved beneath the waves, as German submarines or U-boats waged a ruthless campaign against Allied shipping, sinking merchant vessels. Perhaps the most iconic new weapon to emerge from the war was the tank. Developed by the British in secret crush barbed wire. By 1918, massed tank attacks played a crucial role in the final Allied offensives. The war also took to the skies. The skies above the trenches became a new battleground for aerial dogfights. Pilots like the Red Baron became famous aces. Strategic bombing also began, proving that in future conflicts no one would be safe from the front line. By the autumn of 1918, the Central Powers were collapsing. Years of blockade, the strain of total war, the arrival of fresh American troops on the Western Front had tipped the balance decisively in favor of the Allies. On the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, 1918, an armistice was signed, and the guns on the Western Front finally fell silent. Around 20 million soldiers and civilians were dead. Millions more were wounded, physically and mentally scarred. Entire regions of France and Belgium lay utterly destroyed. In 1919, the victorious leaders met in Paris to hammer out a peace settlement. The Treaty of Versailles focused on punishing Germany. The war guilt clause forced Germany to accept sole responsibility. Many Germans saw the treaty as a humiliating diktat. The peace treaties redrew the map of Europe and the Middle East. The German Empire vanished. New nations were born under the idea of national self-determination championed by Woodrow Wilson. Resentment festered, feeding extremist movements, most notably Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party. The First World War was a cataclysm that fundamentally reshaped the modern world. It shattered the old aristocratic order of Europe, toppling emperors and kings. Women's wartime role bolstered the case for female suffrage. The political map we know today is largely a consequence of the war's outcome. Remembering WYW is not just honoring the fallen, it's understanding the forces that shaped our world, and recognizing the fragility of peace.